Yo Bros, I'm Zach with the Yo Bro Gaming and Review channel, and I'm here with our first retro wrestling review. Now, I'm calling it Retro Rewind, and it is for all our classic pay-per-views that we've seen in the past. It could be WCW, NWA, ECW, Classic WWF. If available, it could be ROH, it could be freaking TNA, Impact Wrestling, New Japan Pro Wrestling, whatever basically you guys can decide. Now, I'm obviously pre-recording this. It's a super nice day out. I have windows open, so if you hear anything in the background, it's just background noise, because at the time of me recording this, it's a gorgeous day. Now, once this video goes up, I will be adding a tier to Patreon. Now, anyone who becomes a Patreon supporter for $10 and up, not only will you get our post shows that we're going to be doing, not only will you get Yo Bro Nation, but you'll also have the option of being able to help me decide on what retro pay-per-views we're going to do. Now, I will give Patrons options each month on what they can pick. That will go up for next month's retro review. It's going to be Halloween, so it's going to be something themed with that. Same in November. I know we're going to have War Games, and we're going to have Survivor Series, so something along the lines of those. But you guys will have options, and you guys will be able to vote on that in the comments. I'll be able to tally that stuff up and everything. So that's for Patreon supporters who will be $10 and up. That's going to be a tier that I'm going to add, and that will be live the same day that this video is dropping, which is today for you watching at home. So what I decided to do, and me and JD decided on this. JD's not here. JD's working. JD's not available. I decided that Fall Brawl, it's September, and the one thing I remember most about wrestling growing up was the War Games pay-per-views, the Fall Brawl War Games pay-per-views. War Games was a concept created by Dusty Rhodes. It was his idea, his baby, and it's been adopted by the WWE now. Well, I wanted to go back, and there was a few options that we had, but this was the one that I wanted to see the most, and JD agreed with me. Well, JD's not here, so I'm still going to do it. So we're going to review Fall Brawl 1998. This was the last actual War Games that WCW had before they shut down. They did one more in 2000, but it was with that three-tier cage concept they did, and they called it War Games, but it wasn't the same. But this was the actual last War Games that WCW had 20 years ago this month. That is a long time. Of course, this was Fall Brawl. It took place in Winston-Salem, North Carolina on September 13th, 1998. Tony Schiavone, Bobby the Brain Heenan, and Mike Tenay were your announce team. You had Mean Gene Okerlund, who was going to be doing the interviews in the alleyway. Shockingly, you only saw Mean Gene that one time during this show. Well, twice during the show, both in the first hour. And he did an interview with Chris Jericho, who basically, Jericho came out, he made the challenge. After they showed a video from Thunder where Jericho basically was mocking Goldberg. And he called out Goldberg for a title versus title match. I'm going to be honest with you. 1998, I think, was the best year of WCW. Not just for the financial standpoint, but, 1998 was when I really got hot into wrestling. But WCW stood out. That was the first show I watched, was Nitro, when Goldberg defeated Hogan at the Georgia Dome. So, I mean, WCW had a real special heart in getting me into wrestling back in 98. Like, I watched it with my aunt before that, off and on, a little bit here or there, and it was good, but it was never quite what it was until I started watching that and I saw those guys. Like I told you, you're going to hear stuff in the background, people working. It's crazy. So that was the opening segment. Jericho in 1998 was hilarious. I think that was possibly the best we'd see of Chris Jericho till his heel turn in 2008, almost 10 years later. So the first match. Now you're going to see me looking down a lot. Obviously I got to look at my notes. I guess I could put my notes up here so I can look at it that way. The first match was the Disco Inferno and Alex Wright versus the British Bulldog and Jim Neidhart. Now, both these guys came along after Bret Hart's departure, after the screw job in Montreal. So both came and joined WCW. Neither one ever really made an impact in the company. And in this match, it was your standard tag team match. Something I noticed, there's a difference between the tag team matches in WCW in the late 90s versus your tag team matches now. Nowadays, you see a lot of, one team gets control, the tags happen. You'll get your frequent tags here and there, whenever you have one team who's leading the match. But in WCW back then, it was like there was never a decisive team, and they just back and forth. Where nowadays, you get the one team who's getting beat down, and then you get your comeback, and then that team usually wins. This match, like I said, it was okay. And I looked at Disco Inferno and Alex Wright, and I saw a 90s version of Breezango with the way these two were and how their entrances were and everything. Not to say that's a bad thing. I like Breezango. But that's what I saw with Disco and Alex Wright, was like a 90s version of Breezango. I'm going to be honest with you, though. This match went way too long. I barely paid attention. It was a solid match to start the show, I guess, but it just went way, way too long. You had a leapfrog gone wrong, and then the Bulldog did his running power slam and got the 1, 2, 3 on Disco Inferno. They called it something else. I can't remember. It's been a minute since I watched that match. I had to split my time up watching the show, so I did some of it a few days ago, and I finished it today, and now I'm recording. But yeah, he got the 1, 2, 3 on Disco. Disco Inferno, man. Disco Inferno was hot at that time. He was one of those guys who was over, but never really got a push, not even in the mid-card. Like, I think he was Cruiserweight and Television Champion at one point. They could have went through the U.S. strap on him. I mean, come on. I like Disco, and Disco's still a guy in the indies. He's got a podcast, which I think people should go watch. He's enjoyable. So like I said, we only saw Mean Gene twice during this show, and then that was backstage with a Scott Steiner interview. He said something about Dr. Schwartz, who I guess was his personal doctor. Said that he was hurt. He had a little Band-Aid on his bicep. I don't have much of a bicep. I need to get to the gym. I want to do that again because I like showing my arms off because I have been working out. That's stupid. Anyways, so yeah, he had a little Band-Aid on his arm, and he's like, look, see, I'm hurt. And you had Buff Bagwell behind him. Look, Dr. Schwartz said he can't work, and then somehow J.J. Dillon just happened to be coming by. And the Mean Gene called him over, and Mean Gene's like, JJ, look at this. And JJ said, hey, I don't care. If you don't wrestle tonight, you're barred for life. Of course, they followed down the hallway. Then came the Chris Jericho match. I thought this would have been later in the night. They ran through it early because it was a sham match. It was Chris Jericho defending his television title versus Goldberg for the world title. Jericho did the Goldberg entrance. He, walked backstage. He had Ralphus and someone else. Hashtag bring back Ralphus. He got lost. It was funny. Finally, Jericho got to the ring, and he faced an imposter Goldberg, which the fans were pretty mad, calling bullshit. I found his name. His name was Johnny Attitude. He was a guy who worked out in the Performance Center, and I guess he was a local guy. Or not the Performance Center, that's now. He worked in the... oh my god, people are going to squash me for not remembering this. The plant. The plant is what they called it. like I said, it was a squash. There was really nothing. The guy got like a spear in, and Jericho like kicked him off, and then just kicked him in the head. Jericho was brutal. But then he got the Lion Tamer on and got him. I can't remember. I couldn't remember the WCW Power Plant. How did I not remember that right off the top of my head? That's pretty bad. This is a part where I liked WCW. The Cruiserweight division was great. You had a good, decent mid-card around those guys, and then your main event scene was usually pretty good. Maybe the NWO stuff got a little oversaturated at times, but it was doable. But then you had matches like that tag match, and you had matches like this that they just went too freaking long. Did not need the time that they gave them. 5-7 minutes max. And maybe this was a 5 to 7 minute match, but it felt so much longer. The Cat versus Norman Smiley. And this started because the Cat intervened during an interview with the Armstrong brothers, who give a fuck about them anyways. Talking about tag team wrestling. Some of the stuff in WCW just did get on my nerves watching it back now. Loved it back then, kind of now. It just kind of gets on my nerves a little bit. But you had the Cat, who was a 3-time World Karate Champion, facing Norman Smiley, who best known for his big wiggle, his little do. Like, I mean, that was the thing back then, and it was over. But Norman Smiley, who very underrated wrestler, wrestled all over Europe, great wrestler. I won't take that away from him. But the Cat came out and he told him that he'll give him 5 seconds because they're brothers. They're both brothers. Talking about the color of their skin, and said let him go, otherwise he's gonna end him. Well, Norman Smiley didn't go. He punched him in the face. The Cat, man, he was a great martial artist though. 3-time World Karate Champion. The match, it was just a regular old match. There was nothing special about it. It was a back and forth kind of thing. The Cat, he had a really great judo throw at one point. I wrote down more notes because you had Cat, the martial arts specialist. You had the submission specialist, who was Norman Smiley. But the match ended on a botched feliner. I'm kind of glad they recovered and didn't go for the fall. Like, if you go back and you watch it, Cat barely grazed the face of Norman Smiley. So he fell back. Cat ended up just elbowing him, stood him up, gave him another one standing. 1, 2, 3. Like I said, match went way too long. But I guess back then people were into that. They enjoyed it. So, and this is where the show starts picking up. You had the Rick Steiner versus Scott Steiner with Buff Bagwell match. Backstory. Buff Bagwell had surgery on his neck. It was a legit injury. And they played it off to be worse than it was. Because I think Buff was wrestling by the beginning of the next year. Like, he wasn't even out a full year from this. And they went ahead and they let him be the manager for Scott Steiner, which I think was best thing that ever happened for Buff and Scott. They were a great tandem together. It sucked that they broke them up after the NWO did their split, finally. But Scott, who back at Super Brawl earlier that year, turned on his brother to join the NWO and give Nash and Hall the tag team titles. Took a while, but then he decided, oh no, I want to be back with my brother. I want to be a Steiner brother again. And Rick's like, look, if you want to be my partner again, want to be my brother, we can do that. But if you screw me over, I'm gonna hunt you down until you die. Rick Steiner was not someone to play with. There's a reason they called him the dog-faced gremlin. Anyway, so he screwed him over again, like right after that same night, within that same moment. And then that's what led to what was supposed to be matches. And they kept avoiding it. They were supposed to have a match, I believe, at Road Wild. And that didn't happen because Scott was, super injured, came out with a breathing mask and arm taped up, neck brace. And J.J. Dillon's like, look, here's what's going to happen. If he doesn't wrestle at Fall Brawl, I'll give it to you tonight. If he does not wrestle with Fall Brawl, he is banned from wrestling for life. And he jumped up, and that show that they were bullshitting. And of course, earlier in the night with the whole, oh, look, I have a Band-Aid. Look, I'm hurt. What can I say about the match? There's nothing super memorable about the match itself. The match itself was just, again, another standard match. But it was for two guys who were known for their wrestling acumen. Now, Scott Steiner was a wrestler who could do suplexes, could be agile, but he was a wrestler. He changed up not only his look, not only his gimmick when he went to the NWO, but he played up his style of wrestling. He went to a very physical style, and Rick was already physical. He was very physical. But both guys were really good, competent wrestlers. This match was physical. They did not hold back on their punches. These two really were, giving it to each other. And, Rick tried chasing down Scott when he tried getting out of the ring. Buff interfered quite a few. Buff interfered quite a few times during this, and finally at the end, Rick just grabbed him by the throat and ran him into the ring post, and he just fell over, just laid there, and he's just, I can't move because it's messing up my lighting. He just kind of laid there like this, and they kind of just kept going with the match, and no one really paid attention. But eventually, he's still laying there, and he's not moving. And they really played up Buff being hurt, and they really started talking about, he had that neck surgery, and Tony Schiavone was going on about how, he had neck surgery, and sometimes it's weaker, sometimes it's stronger. It just really depends, but maybe Buff's rushing back into this. They weren't being sympathetic to Buff, but they were, I guess, showing sympathy, but not being sympathetic, if that makes any sense. Kind of doesn't, I guess. But you had the trainers come out, and they're talking to Buff, and then they're like, come on, we need someone out here. So then the referee is like, yeah, I need EMTs, I need someone out here. And the whole time, you got Rick, he's like not falling for it. He's like, no, is he really hurt? He better not be playing. He's got his fist balled up, and he's ready to fight in case he has to. But no, they're playing it up, and they get you really thinking, okay, Buff's really, hurt. And so they get him onto the stretcher. They're putting on the neck brace. The commentators going on about how they're going to get someone out for the next match, but the producers, they weren't expecting this, so the next guys, they're not ready. Really playing this up. So they finally get him on the stretcher, and they're starting to wheel him towards the back. And here comes Eric Bischoff, and they're like, does Bischoff even care that he's, a wrestler that's hurt, or is it because he's an NW Black and White member? And they referenced how a couple other guys got hurt on Monday. I mean, they really played this up like he was really hurt. You follow him all the way, and, Rick, like I said, all the way up to this point is like, is he really hurt? Is he playing around? And Scott's like, no, look, stop, he's hurt. Finally, Rick's like, okay, he's hurt. Let me, show some sympathy. They go to get him in the ambulance. He's like, I'll get in. And Scott's like, no, don't worry about it. And you hear Buff say, call my mom. Someone call my mom. Rick's like, hey, I don't know who he's talking. He's talking to someone else. I guess maybe Eric Bischoff. Hey, you going to call his mom? He wants someone to call his mom. And he's like, all right, someone's going to call your mom. No sooner they shut those doors. Both doors just come busting open. Rick's just taking his headgear off, and Scott and Buff attacked him. They played this up so good. They beat the piss out of him. Who were there to help. The security guys who were there to help get Buff to the ambulance were now trying to break him apart. Like, you have to give an A+ effort to Buff and Scott. You would have to assume this was made on the fly. Like, Scott somehow had to know, he was going to plan this out. Hey, if he gets his hands on you, play it off that you hurt your neck. Like, they really played this up. They really got it good. And it was real brilliant. The commentators, God bless the WCW commentators. At times, when they would talk about tradition and this and that, it could get on my nerves. But they really played this up. And you could tell Tony Schiavone just wanted to call him a son of a bitch. But he wouldn't, because they were a little PG and they didn't do it. But I appreciate the effort that they put into it, and it was brilliant. It was absolutely freaking brilliant. So they went back to the ring, and it was time for the Cruiserweight Championship match. It was Juventud Guerrero versus Silver King. Now, if you don't know who Silver King is, Silver King was a bigger guy. He was barely at that 220, I think 220-pound mark, maybe 225. But he was barely at that mark, but the dude was agile as hell. But he was also a guy who could ground and pound you if he needed to. So Silver King versus Juventud Guerrero, who even now is probably one of the best wrestlers in the world. Juventud's only in his 30s. I think, let's see, he was 23 in 98. So he's like 43 years old. He's still a young guy. And he's still wrestling. I think he's wrestling for MMLL, or whatever it is. He's wrestling in Mexico. At this time, he was a good wrestler. But it's like he lost the mask at Super Brawl to Jericho, and he only became better. The fans, though, weren't that into this match. A majority of this match was physical. A majority of this match was Silver King keeping Juvi grounded, keeping Juvi at his pace that he wanted. Not to say Silver King wasn't, out there bouncing around with him, jumping and doing moves. Like, he was jumping over the top rope. He was doing dives and flips. There was a botch, though, where Juvi was supposed to do a sunset flip, and he completely missed. And good on Silver King to recognize it, took a step back, punched him, and then went into the next move. Just consummate professional, kept the match going. But right after that, I forgot what the move was, but Juvi reversed it into a standing hurricanrana, flipped him almost on his head, only got a 2 count. Match started picking up. He ended up freaking getting him on the top rope, did this inverted Frankensteiner right onto his belly, only got a 2 count. At this point, the crowd's finally getting into it. Then Silver King, he gets the advantage back, and then he's back on top of Juvi. He goes for a second rope bouncing moonsault, misses. Juvi picks him up. Juvi driver gets to the top rope, does that beautiful, flawless, almost perfect every time 450 splash, and retained the Cruiserweight Championship. The match was good. I've seen better Cruiserweight matches, but Silver King, like I said, he wasn't a mainstay Cruiserweight, and he wasn't really in the title picture all that often, but he did super good in this match. Now back to a match that actually mattered. Not to say that match didn't matter, but one that the crowd was more into, and this was Raven with the Flock versus Saturn. It was under Raven's rules. If Saturn was to win, the Flock would be set free. If Raven was to win, he would be his subservient slave forever, for the rest of his wrestling career. Now, the way this match was set up was... now, Raven got Saturn into the Flock, I believe, in late 97. I could be off of my timeline a little bit. But 97, Raven got Saturn in the Flock. Saturn, long hair, the grunt, off the military, Army Ranger, all that. Well, I guess he finally saw the light, and all of a sudden he had integrity and pride. He had no problems doing what Raven wanted before, but now all of a sudden he was out on a mission to set the Flock free. He lost a match to Lodi on on Nitro, which meant he had to do what Lodi said. And from that point till the pay-per-view, it was everything Lodi wants you to do, you're going to do, and they just tortured him with it. Told him to break Scotty Riggs' fingers. I ain't doing it, break mine, so they broke his fingers. Teasing him, you want to hit me, but you got pride and integrity, really messing with him. So finally he snapped, and he says, look, this is no longer about saving them, this is about saving me and my career. I'm paraphrasing, obviously. The match was a good match. It probably was the show stealer for the night. If you want to look at just straight up match quality, time, length of match, did the match go a little long? Maybe, but not too much. I think the match itself didn't actually go wrong. It's the way it ended, which I'll get to. But match quality, because you looked at Raven and Saturn, they were two of the most underrated guys you had in WCW at the time in the company. And I think Saturn, even when he got to WWE, was underrated in what he did. And Raven, I think they utilized well when he got there. They tried to make Raven and his flock, and they did call him the nest at first, but then they switched it to the flock. They tried to make him as comfortable as they could with like trying to make it like ECW, but Raven and Saturn, underrated wrestlers. Before the match even started, Raven said that he was always an embarrassment and that he was going to make him his subservient slave forever. And then Saturn told him that, hey, win or lose, I know I have my honesty, I know I have my integrity, I'm good. Whatever happens, I'm comfortable with whatever happens. Raven wasted no time. Raven got right into this match, going for falls, just hard-hitting moves immediately. Saturn would counter, and he would do his suplexes and his little bit of submission holds. This was a hard-hitting back-and-forth match, not your technical wrestling classic. And I think it was good for what this match was supposed to be. I don't think it needed to be a hard-hitting classic or technical wrestling classic or whatever. They told a good story. Raven, you could see, was desperate to make sure that he kept Saturn underneath his thumb. And then you can see how desperate Saturn was to get out from underneath Raven, even going to the point of doing something he usually didn't do, like diving, suicide dive over the top rope onto Lodi and Canyon and all of them. Like, it was really good. Saturn, one of the best guys with suplexes, and Raven, so underrated. Saturn, so underrated. Like I said, it was such a back and forth match, and there's a point where Saturn's kind of over Saturn, with his arms pinned, and you've seen it before where they do the moves and they flip and flop and everything. He was doing that, and whoop, I'm losing my notes. Lost my notes, and he tried to hold him down for the pin, and he couldn't, and he went to jump up and push Saturn's body back down because he was trying to bridge, and Saturn got his knees up and crotched him. Raven gets a chair into the ring, does his little drop toe hold with Saturn hitting his face on it. Then here comes the flock with a table. They set up the table, and you don't see it, but here Kidman's set up on the corner as both guys are getting up, and he drop kicks Raven, knocking him down. Crowd freaking erupts. Because they're talking about how the flock, I guess, doesn't want to get out of the flock. But then Kidman's like, no, screw you, I do. So the flock chases him out. Now, the match, I'm stuttering. The match gets really, picks up real quick at this point. So I'm going to read through this quickly. So Flock chased him off. Saturn gets the Death Valley Driver on Raven. Hits it. Only gets a 2 count. This is the point where I'm thinking the match should probably end. And I'll explain more here in a second. He only gets a 2 count because Lodi, he's causing a little interference. Saturn gets up. He's all fired up. Hits multiple suplexes. Ends up getting the rings of Saturn on Saturn. Lodi pulls him out. Then Lodi's up on the top rope and Saturn knocks him down. He ends up running into the referee, knocking the referee out. Both men are down. Canyon ends up getting the key. You guys probably hear that in the background. It's a truck. Saturn ends up getting the key unlocked. Or not Saturn. Canyon, who is a great wrestler, by the way. Mortis, for those who didn't know. Hits stuff out. Comes in the ring. Hits a flatliner. Rolls back out of the ring. Cuffs himself back up. Referee makes only a 2 count. Now, Saturn finally gets back up. Grabs Lodi. Puts him through the table with the Death Valley Driver. Climbs back in the ring. Raven kicks him. Even flow. Only a 2 count. Now, at this point, I'm thinking to myself, why is this match still happening? And why are we still getting all these false finishes? He gets mad. Both men get up. Saturn gets the advantage. Hits another Death Valley Driver for the 1, 2, 3. Finally ends the match. Now, like I said, I thought to myself, the match was good. Like I said, best match of the night, in my opinion. Go back and watch it. It is a good storytelling matchup with really good action. I think the match should have ended once Billy Kidman interfered. That was a great setup to end the match, not give Raven more time. Now, I guess they didn't want Raven to look weak in that moment. Like, oh, 1 drop kick and I'm finished. they wanted to give him more time. Now, what they could have done is at the point that the referee finally got knocked down after those Death Valley drivers and putting Lodi through the table and everything, that's the point where you could have had the flock come out to interfere and Kidman give the drop kick, and then they chased him off, allowing Canyon, after Canyon's already interfered and already got his key taken away, then you had the Death Valley driver on Raven. Then you had Saturn with the win. Just a little bit of a change. Just maybe move that back some and then have the interference at the end. And then that's how the match ended. I didn't like the ending. The ending to me wasn't great. But still, overall, a good, solid match. A very enjoyable match. I enjoyed very much. In between matches, they got a letter or note. Hacksaw Jim Duggan, and I forgot this even happened, had cancer. It was around his kidney. He did have surgery. They removed the entire tumor. They said it was like the size of a football. They just kind of let you know that, hey, Jim Duggan, he's good. He's going home tomorrow. They got rid of the tumor, and it was cancerous. So, like I said, and honestly, if it wasn't for that surgery, we might not have Jim Duggan alive today. So, ho for Jim Duggan. Show stealer of the night, probably. I know I said that for the last match. This was a much shorter match. Dean Malenko, Kurt Hennig, Mr. Perfect with Rick Rude, two of the premier guys in the company at this time, two of the best workers. Dean Malenko. What can you say about freaking Dean Malenko? Dude was such a great worker. Such a physical wrestler, technical wrestler. He encompassed everything you wanted in a wrestler. And then you had Kurt Hennig, Mr. Perfect, who was along with Rick Rude, who were two of the best Intercontinental Champions you ever had. Two of the best workers. Just this match was like, it was kind of like a dream match in a way with these two. And it wasn't their first match, but it was their first one on a big stage like this. And this really got set up because they had a cage match on Nitro that Monday, and the NWO got in the match, interfered. They were going to slam Malenko's head into the cage, and you could see it was clearly plastic that they spray painted to look like it was part of the actual cage. But they never did it. They did it once before, I believe. I think it was Ric Flair's head that got slammed in there. But then here came Arn Anderson, who was already out because he had to have neck surgery from an injury that the NWO made fun of him about. And then on Thunder, he told him how if it was his call, he'd be proud to let him be one of the Horsemen. Very emotional moment. But the match itself, like I said, two of the best ever. To this day, past and present and future, two of the best this company will ever have. And it, like I said, it was a short match, but a very impactful match. In the way that it set up Malenko to become a Horseman later on. Kurt Hennig sold the shit in this. So, he sold great in this match. He really made Malenko look like $1 million. $1 million. You had a very old school mentality with Malenko in this match. He was working that leg over, did not work anything else over. The commentators were calling it like Horseman style work. He was just doing a very old school sort of job. Damn, I didn't realize I was already through the page. Like I said, the announcers refer to it as Horseman style wrestling. There's a point where and this was another great storytelling match with the way Malenko was working over the leg and how Hennig tried to get the advantage. Even at a point, poking him in the eye when he was getting put into a Texas cloverleaf. Nothing worked. Malenko just kept going for the leg. Let's see, where am I at in my notes here? So, he did the eye poke. He didn't take the advantage very long. Malenko kept working on the leg. You had Rude pull him out. They tried to get away. Malenko got him back in the ring, kept working over the leg. Eventually, freaking Hennig tried a perfect plex, couldn't get it on, so Malenko hit him with it, and here comes Bobby Roode. Rick Rude. Man, I'm not on point today. Too many names. I'm dying here. He got back into the ring, and then he hit him causing disqualification. They started to attack him. Here comes Arn Anderson for the save. They clock him from behind. End up working over his arm because, as you found out before the match started, that on Nitro there was going to be an arm wrestling match with both the Horsemen being able to be a group again and Ric Flair being able to wrestle again on the line. I didn't go watch that back to see what happened. I'm pretty sure Arn Anderson still won, even though they worked over the arm, because Ric Flair showed up like a few weeks later in like October. He came back. So like I said, this match, it was a solid match. It was a short match, but it was such a solid match. I loved watching the old school style that they did in that match, which led to the next match. Everyone knows the documented substance abuse issues that Scott Hall had. And at this time, they decided they wanted to run a story angle with it, with Scott starting to allow his issues affect him in the ring, and it was part of what caused the separation between him and Kevin Nash. I'm okay with wrestling sometimes using real life in stories, but I think something like that kind of bugs me, because it's a very severe type of topic. And yes, if you notice there was a cut, I did stop. I was thirsty and needed a drink. But they did what they did. The story was Scott Hall, I guess, started letting his substance abuse problem, in this case alcohol. They left the whole pill situation alone. But he was an alcoholic, a barely functioning alcoholic at that, who had to wrestle Conan, who of course you knew was part of the NWO as well, before they split into the Wolfpack. And before I even get there, and I'll probably mention it again, the Wolfpack, more specifically K-Dog, Conan, super over. Like Stone Cold Steve Austin levels of over in WCW. And it's a shame that he's another guy who didn't get a push because the bigger guys didn't want those guys to get where they wanted to be. We wanted to protect their spots. And I could probably do a whole video on the corruption that was WCW. And I just might do that, actually, as a special video sometime. Who knows? Maybe. But anyways, so you see Scott Hall. He comes out. He's intoxicated, drink in hand. He's got Vincent with him. And Vincent is trying to play it off like, all right, just give me the drink, get to the ring, do your thing. And even when he gets in the ring, he doesn't even get to his point. He's on the other side of the other ring rather than in the ring where the referee's at. So Scott Hall gets in there, does his little survey, hey, yo, one more for the good guys, that whole thing. And I loved it. I loved his whole shtick. K-Dog comes out, does his rowdy thing. There wasn't much of a match here. I'll be honest. It wasn't a great match. And yes, Scott Hall's issues were starting to get to him. But WCW worked through it because they made money. And I guess it wasn't as bad yet at this point. But the match was really like mind games. What were they doing to get underneath one's skin? Every once in a while, Scott would stop to take a drink. Just mind games. At one point, K-Dog, he pushes him down into the ring, kicking him, and Scott tries to climb to the other side, and you have Vincent up there. He's talking to K-Dog, trying to get his attention, and K-Dog's having none of it. So here comes Scott Hall. He turns around and still clothesline him. Like, K-Dog had control of this match. Until finally, at a point, Scott Hall finally got the advantage. He finally slowed it down, put him in, kind of had him his arms. He had him in a little rest hold. He was stretching him out. Finally, K-Dog gets out of it, but they get to the corner where the ref is, and being the wily veteran, even though he's drunk, ends up low blowing K-Dog twice. And he kind of kept control of the match. Every time K-Dog would try to get something, he would do something to keep him under control. And I haven't seen this in so long. He's got him in the abdominal stretch, and he's stretching him out, and he does the whole where he reaches for the ropes, and he just pulls real hard, and he just holds him there, and he lets go. And the ref's like, "You do this?" He's like, "No, I didn't do nothing." I don't know why. I find that funny, and I love that old school cheat to win mentality, but it's not how they always win. Like, I miss the old school heel ways. I miss the old school wrestling ways. I don't know. I just miss all of it. But anyways, finally, K-Dog gets the advantage when Scott Hall, he's in control. He's like, time for the outside edge. He's like, nah, one more. And he goes to take another drink. K-Dog slaps in his face, gives him a little front face buster, also known as the X Factor. Gives him that face buster. Gets him in the Tequila Sunrise. Scott Hall just taps. And then they start going on these puns like, hey, if Scott Hall was president of the WCW, he'd make everything rounds. They started like making fun of Scott Hall's alcoholism. No, I can't do that. That just something about that to me is wrong, and I can't do it. I'm sorry. I couldn't do it. Match was okay. Match was nothing spectacular. But it was good enough, and the fans loved it. Like I said, Conan, man, and even like Tenator in the match stated, Conan was over like gangbusters. It's like he almost got overlooked. Came out of Mike Tenay's mouth. It's like he gets overlooked for those bigger guys, but he's super over. I don't know. K-Dog never really got over. I guess when he did the whole freaking Filthy Animals things, when he finally became the leader and was, I don't know, rewarded or something. Then came the main event, War Games. And War Games, like I said, is one of my favorite matches. One of my favorites. And the way they did this one was different than in years past. This one was for the #1 contendership. 3 teams, the winner, whoever pinned whoever, that person would be the #1 contender for Halloween Havoc against Goldberg. It was a 5-minute interval to start. The captains would chose who got to go in first, and then it was random drawings after that. Every 2 minutes, someone would come out. You probably heard, I don't know, someone's messaging me, I think. The teams consisted of, for the NWO Wolfpack, Kevin Nash, who was the captain, Sting, and Lex Luger. NWO Hollywood, Hogan obviously was the captain, Bret Hart, and for some reason, Stevie Ray. Stevie Ray was in this match. He was cannon fodder. That's why he was in this match. Team WCW, Diamond Dallas Page, Roddy Piper, and the man they call Warrior, the Ultimate Warrior. First thing I want to say, because I wrote it in my notes, and then I'll go over the order in which they came, and then I'll tell you guys, what happened during the match, what I could keep track of. What was the point in having teams if they were going to fight each other, and this was for the #1 contendership, and it was every man for himself, but you set up teams? Why not just say, you 9 guys are the top 9 contenders, or the top 10 contenders. I'm going to throw you guys in this cage, and you guys are going to come out in intervals, and the winner is the champion. Now, you can still do what you did with Hogan and Stevie Ray working together, because NWO for life, and then go from there. You could build stories off of it. Oh, will the Wolfpack implode? Is the NWO going to implode? Will WCW be able to coexist? Every man for himself. Will there be allies? You could have built a story around this, but instead it was, these guys are teams, and it's every man for himself, and then there's dissension. You didn't have to have the team aspect of it in this match. It didn't make sense. Yes, I understood it was to propel DDP. Sorry, spoiler alert. It was to propel DDP into that main event spot, which ended up being a fantastic match. Anyways, that's all I'm gonna say, because it just, the whole team aspect, it just got on my nerves. Order of entry: number one in the ring was Diamond Dallas Page. Number 2, Bret the Hitman Hart. Number 3, Stevie Ray. Number 4 was Sting. Number 5 was Roddy Piper. Number 6 was Lex Luger, weakest of the bunch. Number 7, Kevin Nash. Number 8, Hollywood Hogan. And number 9 was the Ultimate Warrior. That was the entrances and the orders that they appeared. The match started with DDP and before I even get there, of course, Hogan was going to be one of the last ones. Of course, Warrior was going to be one of the last ones. Those two didn't want to work. Those two were just there to try to put each other over and build each other's storylines. But DDP and Brett started. They had the 5-minute interval. And in that 5 minutes, they probably put on one hell of a match in 5 minutes. A lot of chain wrestling, a lot of holds. DDP, probably not known for his work, but he was a hard worker. But like I said, they wrestled. They didn't use the cage. Actually, the cage never really, with the exception of a couple times, never really was utilized in this, like, in past War Games matchups. Again, and I want to touch on this because I never really get to talk about it. Bret Hart in WCW was super mishandled. They brought him in as a face, and I listened to interviews, and Bret was put in the NWO to kind of keep him comfortable and happy because guys like Savage, guys like Hogan, guys like Nash didn't want Bret coming in and taking the championship, didn't want Bret coming in and being the guy. He already had the big contract. They felt threatened, and they tried to hold him down. And that's the truth. That's what really happened. Anyways, Stevie Ray ends up coming in, and him and Bret are double teaming DDP. Sting comes out, and then he's helping even the odds. You see him at one point. He comes in. He runs from the one ring, jumps over both ropes onto Stevie Ray to the other side. Sting was an athletic mofo back then. Sting finally is the one who made first use of the cage, slamming Stevie Ray into the cage. Piper gets in. He starts attacking everyone, to including DDP, which is why I'm like, what? Why'd they have teams if it was every man for himself? They were building the storyline. Piper told him, every man for himself. No one believed him. Some decisions WCW made were just stupid to me, I guess. By this point, Luger's coming in. He is the weak link in this match. He literally did nothing other than like a torture rack. The match was just, it was chaotic. It was a chaotic match by this point, and it was hard to follow. Kevin Nash comes in. Kevin Nash gets his moves in. Everyone erupts. Holy crap, Kevin Nash. I popped. I won't lie. I geeked out, marked out for Kevin Nash. Then you see Hogan coming in. He sneaks in the ring, starts attacking. It's like 1 minute and 20 seconds before he's supposed to even come in. And him and Stevie Ray are with the slapjack and just beating up people and taking out people. And timer goes off for him. You're about 1 minute in, and all of a sudden you see smoke. Smoke's popping up. You see Bret laying on the mat. I guess Bret hurt his knee. Nothing severe because he was at Halloween Havoc. Bret just had, like I said, Bret had such a terrible, terrible time in WCW. But so you see Bret laying on the ground, and all of a sudden this guy comes up. I'm assuming it's supposed to be Warrior. You never see his face. You just see him from the side, just and then Hogan knocks him down to the mat. He faced the entrance, so now a lot of people could really see his face. They're beating up. More smoke. They pulled the jacket off of him, and then he's gone. So I guess whoever it was, he was underneath the rings, and then the timer went off, and then here comes Warrior barreling in through, comes in the cage, clears house, makes Hogan get out, him and Disciple lock the cage. This is where the match came to a standstill. The match stopped. You just see Warrior following around the cage, following Hogan. Finally, Hogan starts to leave, and he kicks through the cage to get out, goes after Hogan. It's like they built this match to get DDP over, but it was also to get Hogan and Warrior's issues over. And I can't lie, I don't like that. I don't like the fact that these two were again holding down younger talent. But it was a hot angle at the time, I guess. Hot takes. I just have them everywhere. Hot takes. So they get out, they fight. You get back into the ring finally, and you got DDP standing up. Bret's kind of hobbling around on him. Like, you can tell he's hurt. Sting's laying behind him. Here comes Stevie Ray. Sting grabs Bret, pulls him down. I don't know what he was supposed to do, if he was supposed to try to like roll him up or I don't know. But then DDP out of nowhere hits Diamond Cutter to almost no reaction and gets the 1, 2, 3. And the crowd don't really respond until he's announced as the winner. I don't know if it was because there was a bunch of smoke or if the fans were just like pooped out from the match, the previous matches. I don't know. But DDP didn't get much of a reaction. And DDP was super, super over. He was like the most over guy in the company next to Goldberg and Sting. So, I mean, next to Sting, the Wolfpack, and Goldberg, he was like super over. He was the people's champion. I mean, he was over like gangbusters come Halloween Havoc. But yeah, DDP became the mandatory challenger for Goldberg's championship. Those two had a fantastic match. Everyone knows the debacle that happened at Halloween Havoc where they got cut off at the main event and no one saw it. I was one of those people who got to watch it at my buddy's house, and we were pissed. But then they showed it for free on Nitro the next night, so heck, should have just waited. It was a weird ending. I don't know. It was just a weird ending to what was an okay match. It was not the best War Games match at all. I think a lot of people didn't like the concept. I'm not the concept of the match, but the concept of how they wanted to set the match up for this particular show. But it was okay. So that's pretty much it. That was Fall Brawl 1998. DDP would go on to eventually be a world champion. Sting would go on to leave the NWO Wolfpack. Kevin Nash, we know what happened. Finger poke of doom. This really did set a path for most people. Brett finally, a year later, would become WCW champion. I mean, Fall Brawl, if I'm to give it a score, based off of what it was and where it led, I'm going to give it, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm going to give it a 6.5 out of 10. It's an okay score. But it was one of my favorite pay-per-views back then. But then rewatching it, not the greatest. So that's going to do it for me. I am Zach with the Yo Bro Gaming and Review channels. You can follow us on all our social media. You can go to Yo Bro Gaming and Reviews on Facebook, Yo Bro Gaming 1 on Twitter, Yo Bro Nation on now Public T Public. I'll get it right. T Public is Yo Bro Nation. Go follow us on there. The link's going to be down in the description. You can also find us on Patreon at Yo Bro Gaming and Reviews. Go to our Patreon channel. You can help decide what I do for another Retro Rewind review. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I'm Zach, representing JD, Jake at times. Thank you guys so much, and have yourselves an awesome, fantastic day. Follow us. Go do our stuff. You savages. Yo, bros.